I'm Guy Hebert, former NHL goaltender. That's the mask.
And I'm Ken French, longtime broadcaster, and that would be the mic.
And you know what? We're back together again, this time on a brand new podcast called The Mask and the Mic.
Yeah, and on today's podcast, we welcome Kansas City Royals legend and Angels fan favorite, Mark Gubicza. From opening day starts to Gubie Tuesdays, he has done it all.
And you know what, Frenchie? He's a two-time All-Star, a World Series champion, and now the guy keeping it fun in the broadcast booth. We're talking baseball, behind-the-scenes stories, and maybe a few curveballs along the way, which I hope we get to see.
Absolutely. We hope you enjoy the show, and good for us. Hello and welcome to another edition of The Mask and the Mic. Ken French, Guy Hebert, back with you this time, episode 3, another special guest. Honored to have on the program, longtime MLB veteran with the Kansas City Royals and 2 games with the Angels. And
we call that a cup of coffee, in the league.
With the Angels, and longtime broadcaster.
Cheers.
You know him best, Gubie Tuesdays. This is a Gubie Wednesday. Gubie, welcome to the program.
Frenchie Guy, what's going on, fellas? Yeah, it is. It's almost a Tuesday. It's another W. Why not? Even if it's Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Sunday.
Well, thanks for agreeing to be part of this program that we call a podcast that we're doing. And we were, obviously high on our list. And thank you for agreeing to do this. But I want to kick things off. We're friends. We've been broadcast partners for a long, long time, but really never kind of got into your background. And obviously we hear about Philly all the time. Fly, Eagles, fly. It gets tiring at times, I'll be honest. But I was reading your bio, and growing up in Philly, you played many sports, obviously baseball, football, basketball, but hockey and boxing? Tell me about that. Is that real? Is Wikipedia real?
Yeah, I got some veneers here from hockey with a hockey puck. I tried to be a goalie, Guy. Without a mask, it doesn't work real good unless you're playing back in the 1940s or 50s. So just getting on,
with straight sticks, no curves.
Yes, he was hacking us a whack. But we used to go into those ice skating rinks like on the weekends and stuff. And I thought I was, how I stopped when I was skating was just slamming into the board. So it wasn't a whole lot of finesse or a lot of skill as far as my hockey way. But we actually, believe it or not, had a PE class in grade school, boxing. I kid you not. Can you imagine going boxing? And then all of a sudden, I'll go, first class starts at 8:30 after you'd been boxing. And one of my best friends who was tough as nails, he actually won a tough man contest later on in his lifetime. He's a lefty. And we're in there with no headgear, by the way. And we're out there boxing. I'm trying, do some stuff. I thought, hey, I watch enough of those Rocky movies. I think I know what I'm doing. Then bam, dropped. So I said, okay, good. First of all, you lose your cool.
Go to first period.
Yeah. By the way, what's 2 + 2? 75. Okay, you did good. But we did that for a number of years. I'm thinking, I look back, I go, I can't believe we have boxing as far as one of our PE classes back in grade school.
Unreal.
Well, it's so funny about the Broad Street Bullies of, the 1970s Philadelphia Flyers, right on Broad Street where the Spectrum was. And of course, now I get it, right? Not only were they tough on the ice, but they're teaching the kids in grade school how to box. How fitting is that?
Yeah, Guy, I'll tell you, it's still, to this day, guys that played on that team are still revered more than any human beings on the planet because they had such an incredible fan base. And at that point, Philly sports, as much as we love to talk about our sports teams there wasn't a whole lot of success at that point. The Sixers in the 70s, one year were 9-73. The Phillies were losing every year. The Eagles were 2-12. But the Flyers were the team that everyone kind of felt like, okay, we got a chance to win. If we don't win, we're going to win it with our knuckles at some point or so.
Well, if people don't remember, my mom was actually a huge Flyers fan back during that time, and she loved Bobby Clark, but there was Reggie Leach, Rick McLeish, Bernie Perrant in that, and then you had Dave the Hammer Schultz, Bob Kelly, Gary Dornhofer. They're just names that you just don't ever forget because they were just so iconic. And like you said, it was so fun to watch because if they didn't beat you in scoring, you knew that there's going to be some knuckle puck going on.
Exactly. But the thing was that Philly's always identified as a city like that. It's this hardcore. They're battle. They're blue collar. So that was the perfect team at that point. And from that point forward, every sports team around there kind of drew that from Buddy Ryan was the head coach of the Eagles. So it was always about remember all the times that they would say even on kickoff returns they were trying to crush the opponent. So it kind of grew into that. You see that with the Phillies now with a lot of the guys that have on their team. Even the Sixers when they had George McGinnis and all those guys and Dr. J and Moses Malone, that it kind of took upon exactly the way the city was. And I think it all started really with the way the Flyers played.
Being from Philly and growing up around that team, you mentioned boxing as a period in grammar school or whatever when you were growing up. I mean, were those options for you from being an athlete to box or to play hockey?
I knew one for hockey. I just know I didn't have that skill set. That's for sure. I mean, I love basketball because we hung out at a schoolyard, felt like 24 hours a day. So we were playing basketball, whether it was cold. Sometimes the best thing ever is anybody ever knows that with the cold weather, when you dribble a basketball in the cold, the ball doesn't bounce. And also it helps out when you shoot it, that when it hits the rim, it's a little more flexible for you so you can make a few more shots. So I love basketball, probably even more so than baseball growing up because I played it all the time. Baseball wise, you generally need a team. Basketball, you can shoot the hoops by yourself. But I used to play wire ball, wall ball as a baseball player just to get my arm going. So what I mean by wire ball is throwing a baseball at the telephone wires and then you react to catching it. So all this say build my arm strength, throw it against my wall, living in a row home. I remember my mom opened up the door again. You're throwing the ball against the wall again. I said, Mom, it's a brick wall. It's not going to do any harm. I go, but we hear that in the house, by the way. We hear that. And it's banging all the time. So, I love all sports growing up, I think. And I was even telling, my family here yesterday, the same story about we literally woke up, we're out of the house, came back for lunch, out of the house, came back for dinner, out of the house, and then boom, in bed, and then back out doing the same thing the next day, constantly doing something, stickball, playing street hockey, which was fun, playing basketball, and also playing football. When it snowed, you could play tackle football. We were convinced in the snow when it's even on cement because it wasn't as painful landing on cement when we had snow there. So we weren't the smartest cats in the world, but we still had fun.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I think, we're of similar generations, right? And that's what we did. We just got out of the house, did something all day long, and just went home when it was time to eat. And it's funny you talk about throwing the ball against the wall. Like I grew up playing street hockey, and in our driveway, we would close the garage doors. At one point, we broke all the windows in the garage door. So my dad just put wood there, but people would drive by our house, and with, the bad weather and all that, you could just see when the tennis ball would get wet, it would leave this mark. And so there would be hundreds of tennis ball marks on the aluminum siding, on the wooden of the door. And they'd be like, what are those? My dad would pull in the driveway and be like, okay, like you guys got to clean this up. But it was just such a cool rite of passage to be doing that. And you knew who played hockey as you drove down the street just by their garage doors.
Yeah. And I think too, your parents felt good because they knew you were going to be close by the house. It was going to be with all of your friends, all the kids in the neighborhood. So they never really had to worry about it. So all they had to do was like, my dad would come home and for dinner, we heard his whistle about 800,000 miles away, like we were dogs getting called home. So we were literally running home, okay, dinner time. And then as soon as my dad was a mailman for all those years and he was tired. As soon as we were done eating with 4 boys in the house, he's like, please, by all means, leave and go out of the house before you break something else in this house.
Gubie, when did baseball become your sport of choice with, all the other stuff that you were playing growing up and being outdoors like you guys were talking about? When did you decide that baseball was kind of the path you wanted to go down?
Yeah, Frenchie, my dad played minor league baseball in, I think it was 50, 51, 52 range with the White Sox. And at that point, it was A, B, C, and D League. And I think he played down in Kentucky in D League baseball. He never really talked a lot about it because I don't think he had a lot of success. I went on Baseball Reference and actually checked him out. He actually had more walks than I did on the mound. So he was a little bit wild like me, but 3 older brothers, they all played. My older brother was a pretty good baseball player. He played a little bit at college too. And I remember just idolizing him, walking around. He was 7 years older than me. So we were always watching. My dad was a coach. So for that period of time from like 3 or 4 months a year where it wasn't freezing or raining or snowing, baseball was it. And we had this little league field there close by our house, and we were there all the time. And I was a bat boy when I was real young, and then all of a sudden I started to play. And the weird thing was, and I'll tell you a story, it's pretty wild, that here I am playing with, it was A, B, and C league. And so I'm in C league, so that's 8 and 10-year-olds. And, we were playing with dungarees, we call them, or jeans with a t-shirt. Everyone else, as I see now, they have the nice uniforms. So I remember playing, and I remember hearing parents, and it was weird that I even asked my brothers about it. He goes, it's wild how people would scream at me thinking I was like older than an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old because I was taller than everybody at this point. And I was playing pretty good at that point. So it was certainly, I got ready for Philly fans early on. I was ready for those New York fans giving me grief, warming up in the bullpen. So I had parents doing that to me early on, but I just, I had success playing baseball. I loved it. I idolized a lot of guys like Big McBride and Manny Trio growing up, Steve Carl, Mike Schmidt, Greg Lisinski, on the Phillies. But again, I go back to, for the longest time, the Phillies were not real good. They go into a gas station, you get their 8x10 pictures at the gas station. That's how cool it was at that point. And you're looking, I'm like, really? These guys? But they were still your idols. And then eventually the Phillies started becoming good there in the mid-'70s. And then it took off and they were successful like they have been lately, winning some baseball games.
I have to ask you one thing, though, because obviously we know you as a pitcher. But in my great research, as I like to do.
Great job, Frenchie. Way to go down the rabbit hole of research.
Listen to this. And again, I don't know if this is true. I have to ask you. So in Little League, you play a little shortstop, from what I understand. And in a 17-game stretch, you had 57 hits. Is that real?
Yeah.
Am I reading that right?
No, it is. I don't know where you're getting all this stuff, by the way. I didn't even know all this stuff. But I do remember that.
Wait a minute.
I even still have a few baseballs from my Little League team that, games where you threw a no-hitter or something like that. But I love hitting a lot better than I did pitching. I was a shortstop even in high school all the way up to my senior year. And then a certain major league player, a future major league player, Ruben Amaro Jr., came aboard as a freshman. He ended up being a shortstop, and I ended up being an outfielder. He was a really good shortstop. A lot of times you think of, Cal Ripken Jr., being tall. Sometimes you outgrow that position. You think of guys more with the footwork, athletic, and to be able to cover a lot more ground. So I ended up moving to the outfield. But I did like hitting a lot more. And that's why I always, when I'm doing a broadcast, everyone goes, oh, you're a pitcher. You don't know a whole lot about hitting. I granted, it's been a long time since I hit, but I also know what pitches I used to hit, what pitches I used to throw that you can hit. So
we talk about that all the time. It's like when a guy gets traded, it's like who has got the advantage when a hitter faces a pitcher when they're on the same team, or if a shooter faces a goalie when they're would shoot on you in morning skates in practice, like
forever.
Yeah. Like who has the advantage? Gubie, let's go with you.
You know what? Especially when I faced my former catchers, my battery mates, that was so in my mind that I was just hoping he didn't hit a home run. That's all I was thinking of, because he always knew my tendencies. He knew what I threw when I was in a stressful moment. He knew when I was, overthrowing the ball. I knew, my shoulder reaction, everything in my mind, he knew exactly. Like Mike McFarland, one of my good friends, he goes off to Oakland and eventually Boston. And I'm like, I always felt that when he was my catcher, I was like, man, I would get him out so easily. Now that he's an opponent who knows my tendencies, he always got me. It was the most bizarre thing ever. And I hate it because for me on the mound, I felt, besides stuff, was the intimidation factor. And if you're my teammate and you're my friend, I don't think they ever worry about me throwing the ball in at them and knocking them down anymore. So I think hitters were more comfortable. And it's as weird as that sounds, they were more comfortable knowing that there's a good chance that I'm not going to run a pitch in, at least intentionally, at them, so they can look out over the plate. And I think there's no question when you've taken away that savagery that you have on the mound. Like before I let you answer your thing, Guy, when I made the All-Star team, it was the worst thing for me. It was the greatest thing, yet it was the worst thing. Here I am now, teammates with Don Mattingly's, the Mark McGuire's, and the Skaggs, those guys, and Dave Winfield, people like that. I had in my mind, they thought I was insane out there, nuts on the mound, that he didn't know where I was throwing the ball. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, he's not a bad guy. And I'm like, oh, that was the worst thing ever. I didn't want them ever to feel comfortable in the batter's box
edge.
when I'm on the
Your
mound.
edge, right?
And I and then in my mind, I lost it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, Guy, you're the same way. When a guy knows your tendency, when you get down to get, be able to block the shot, when you use the blocker, when you use the glove, when you go to try to keep the 5-hole, whatever it is, they know you because they were shooting shots at you all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I think both sides kind of fight it, right? Like I start to think, oh, he knows my weakness. I have to overcompensate for that, whether it's say low blocker or 5-hole. But then the shooter, if you ask them, he's like, well, you know where I like to go all the time. And for me not to shoot there, it goes against my whole concept of how I like to shoot the puck. So it's that thing that we both start to overthink, right? Yeah. And I think for a goaltender, I think it's almost easier for me only in the fact that like I'm in a position, I just try to react to the shot. So I read the situation, I try to anticipate and then react to the shot. So I think in the back of my mind, kind of like any shooter, I have a book of knowledge, knowing their particular spots that they want to shoot if they've got the time. If they don't have a lot of time, then I know they're just going to try to put the puck on the net. But yeah, it's really interesting. I always went to like, a shootout where, okay, now there's no, guys coming out shootout. I mean, it's ridiculous now how slowly they come down. But if there was a penalty shot or a shootout, they kind of come down and they know that there's no pressure from behind chasing them. So they have a little more time to make the move that they want. So I always thought that was a huge advantage for the shooter. Mm-hmm. But if it was a breakaway in a regular game, I actually thought that the advantage was to me knowing his tendencies, even though that, they wanted to be able to score, right? Someone wants to hit the ball and hit a homer off of you or hit something in play off of you. So it's one of those weird things. If we had somebody else from the other side, if we had Garrett Anderson back on and talking about him being a hitter, or I had, Paul or Tamu or somebody on and say like, hey, who really has the advantage? It'd be interesting to hear what they had to say.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do like the fact that when you played in the All-Star game and those guys, because when I played in the All-Star game, it's like whatever that you have over them kind of disappears because it's the same type of thing. Hey, this guy's he's a great guy. He's like to hang. Oh, he's not crazy. He's not going to throw at me next time. We became buddies during the All-Star weekend. So Guba's, oh yeah, he's fine.
Exactly.
Gubie, who did you want
Frenchie,
to pick? Yeah,
and Frenchie is not fine.
I'm not fine.
No, I totally agree with you on that one.
Never in my mind. Okay, so Gibo, if I'm right on this, didn't you face Gretzky in the All-Star game?
I did. Actually, the All-Star game I went to was just, it was like a Hall of Fame All-Star weekend of, Lemieux and Gretzky and Yzerman. And I mean, it's an incredible weekend for me to look back at. And I actually, it's one of those dream things. Gretzky got the puck. He was all alone. He walked in the middle of the slot and, guys didn't try extremely hard back then, but he just wired a slapper and, I had a clear view of it. I made the big glove save and it was an incredible moment. And, I think that for Wayne, he probably could care less if he scored, but for me to make that save on it was one of the highlights of my career. But it's great because during those, All-Star games, you're having a lot of fun. And I'm sure the same for you, Gubie, that, just the interaction with the players. And, Gretz is like, I got a great picture of Gretzky standing next to me, which he probably was never in front of the net in his entire career like that. But he's standing next to me and he's laughing and talking to me. And I got a big grin on my face. And I happen to have a picture of that, which is really just priceless. But yeah, I mean, those moments, I'm sure for all of us who are lucky enough to go to those All-Star games, you look back certainly later in life and go, man, was that cool. But speaking of that, I mean, Frenchie, I don't know if this is where your segue is going.
I have no segue.
Is there a moment of, your All-Star appearances that you look back at most fondly and say, hey, I struck this guy out. My junk was really working great during the All-Star game. Is there something that you remember specifically?
Yeah, obviously so many Hall of Famers were either my teammates or going against it. But the one game, and it's kind of a little bit of a longer story, shocker with me, how this came about. So my first All-Star game, we're in Cincinnati. I'm facing Gary Carter, who obviously, no longer with us, but it was a Hall of Famer. And I think he had been in like 13, 14, maybe even more All-Star games in his career. So I'm facing him, and I remember seeing him and, obviously in National League, American League, we didn't have that interleague play at that point. So I just watching him on TV. So I struck him out. I remember on a slider, just way off the plate. And he swing and miss. So fast forward, like that winter, Nike used to always have these trips where they bring a bunch of guys from from the baseball world on trips to different places, like whether it's, Hawaii or somewhere else. So here we are in Grand Cayman down there. We're all sitting around. I'm sitting around with Gary Carter, Mike Schmidt, a bunch of incredible players. And I remember, Gary Carter coming up to me, goes, "You know what?" I say, "Mr. Carter." He goes, "No, please call me Gary." Because David Cohn, my good buddy, was his teammate there with the Mets. And he goes, "Dude, you struck me out in the All-Star game." I go, for me, it was a thrill. And he goes, "That's the only strikeout he ever had in the history of the All-Star game for him. He's only struck out once ever. And he was in an All-Star game for like 15, 16, 17 years." And I'm like, "Really?" And I looked into it and researched it and asked people. It goes, "Literally, that was the only time." I said, "Oh," I joked around. I said, "Oh, that's because you never saw me before. You didn't know my 10." He goes, "That slider you threw was the most unhittable slider I've ever seen." So I was so humbled sitting there and we're going into a conversation with Mike Schmidt, and Mike Schmidt was like, here I am playing stickball all my life, and here Mike Schmidt's right next to me. And so I'm like, "Hey, Mr. Schmidt," talking, and he was cool, but it was like, okay, it's not a fan show. This is a group of baseball players getting together, just having something to eat, maybe a cold one. So then Gary Carter gets me to side. He goes, "Ask him how he did against David Cohn." So I go, "Hey, Mr. Schmidt." He looks at me. I go, "Okay. Hey, Mike, how did David Cohn?" He goes, "I used to wear him out." And Gary Carter right away just goes like, "Yes, not so much." And he struck you out all the time. So they're going back and forth, joking around and stuff like that. But it all was started because of the fact is I had a strike. And I had no idea at that point. That was the only time he ever struck out in an All-Star game. And the All-Star games at that point, hated the American League. And we were always the junior circuit. So even though American League teams seemed they were around longer than the National League, but the National League used to absolutely crush the American League. So we beat them in '88 and then came back and we had the All-Star game in '89. It were, the Bo Jackson one. And we won that one too. And then all of a sudden you see the American League starting to win. And then, even seeing Pete Rose later on, he goes, "Boy, we hate the American League. You guys had the DH. You guys had the longest games. That league was nowhere near as good as the National League." But I always go, "Yeah, but I was 2-0 against you." And he'd give me that look like, "Yeah, but I had 4,000 hits." I go, "Yeah, you did."
Yeah.
Yes, that would be a mic drop moment. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Rose, for that. Thanks for reminding me. Gubie, that being said, you talk about great hitters that you faced in the All-Star game. Is there a guy, and I know you've been asked this many times, but please reveal the hardest hitter, the guy that you dreaded facing game in, game out during the regular season?
Don Mattingly, without question. There's some guys with some other decent numbers, but Don Mattingly was that guy. Even this winter on MLB Network, when there was talk about him being in the Hall of Fame, which, by the way, he is a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Anybody that's ever faced him knows he was a Hall of Famer. He missed out by just a couple votes, I think it was, but he was up there. Not only he could hit, but he was up there in those big moments. He's one of those guys in those big moments you go, "Oh, man, I hope there's nobody on base," or I hope, that somehow he misses his pitch, which he never did. Even towards the end when his back was giving out, I would tell guys, even some of the guys I ended up knowing on the Yankees, "I can't get him out." He goes, "All you got to do is throw him away. His back, he can't reach that ball." I go, "All right, let me give it a shot." So I throw him a fastball away, and he hits a double right down the left field line. It lands on the line. He goes to second base. I look back at him, and I went like this, "Uncle." And he starts laughing. Don Mattingly is one of the fiercest competitors ever, but I was one of the first times he just turned and laughed. And I looked down and I go, "I give up. I can't get you out, no matter what. You can go up there with a blindfold on right now, and you're still going to get hit." But he would get that hit against me too, where we're up 2-1. And even if there's no one on, there's a double. Here he is in scoring position. Or if the man on first, he would get him in. I'm like, I couldn't get him out. He was in my mind. And he was incredibly comfortable at the batter's box. That's the thing. If you're a hitter, you're comfortable against a pitcher. It doesn't matter if it's Nolan Ryan. You're going to get a good swing against him. I mean, you look now, even the guys that you think with the best stuff in the world, sometimes it's one of those guys that aren't Hall of Famers, but you're still comfortable in the batter's box or on the mound against. And that's the biggest thing. You know that, Guy. When doesn't matter if say it is Gretzky, if you've had some good saves, his tendencies, you're going to be right. And vice versa. He's going to go, he always makes those saves against me. I don't know what to do to be able to get that puck by him. So it's all a matter of confidence both ways, whether it's confident or not confident in how successful. And Mattingly, he just wore me out. This completely wore me out. And I always laugh at him every day. He goes, hey, you better thank me when you get in the Hall of Fame, because I guarantee you I'm one of those guys that got you in the Hall of Fame. He goes, oh, I definitely will mention you.
It's funny because I think all athletes have, their kryptonite, and it's either a building, a ballpark, for me, a hockey rink, or players. And sometimes you can't put your finger on it, and you don't know why you just don't perform well against a certain team in a certain building. And I know that for me, sometimes it was, being on the West Coast, a Western Conference player, traveling to the East Coast, and you only play in those buildings, once a year. And I know you guys are in town for a few days and play several games, but for hockey, you're in and out. And so I think when you get that in your head and you're in a building, let's say like, Montreal or Toronto, Boston, New York, there's some intimidating buildings to go into, and you go in there. And if you haven't had success, especially the first time you go into those buildings, it just somehow sticks with you, and it is, and it's a tough barrier to break through. And for me, it was, I'd never really played well against the Montreal Canadiens. I had some good games. I look forward to playing them every year just because as an original six team, it was really great to be able to play, especially in Montreal form. But every time I saw them on this schedule, I was like, okay, somehow I have to break through and get a win. So did you have not just the player, but did you have a team or a stadium that just kind of had your number?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. The funny thing is, and even reflecting it, because it's not there anymore, is Tiger Stadium in Detroit. They had an infield with the incredibly thick infield grass. Okay. And I'm a sinker ball pitcher. So you think, okay, that's the perfect stadium. Yet for whatever reason, I'm a fly ball pitcher there. And then an overhang in right field, so many home runs hit. And Kirk Gibson one time, my teammate at one point in my career, hit 3 home runs against me in a game. And I never gave up home runs, period, but I did that. Darrell Evans, Cecil Fielder, all these guys, I couldn't get anybody out. But I faced the same team in Kansas City. I'm going 9 innings, giving up 1 or 2 runs. So I thought, what am I doing wrong here? So I remember, the funny thing in that old stadium, I'm guessing that nobody was really all that tall back in the day. So I literally would hit my head on the ceiling of the dugout almost every time. And I remember I'm thinking, at some point I'm going to get concussion. I would come off the ground, bam, hit my head. I'm like, all right, maybe I should keep ramming my head against this. Maybe I'll get somebody out, but I couldn't get anybody out. And it was so in my grill at that point. I'm thinking, I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, we got 3 days in Detroit. I'm pitching. Oh, I got to pitch in Detroit again. Oh man, I can't. I couldn't win. And to this day, I still say that '84 Detroit Tigers team was the best team I've ever seen. I know there's a lot of people now, saying that Dodgers team last year or the Yankees in '98 or whatever it was. That Tiger team in '84, they had a lot of Hall of Famers on that team too, from Trem and all those guys. Jack Morris, they had Lance Parrish behind the plate. Lou Whitaker, who, again, in my opinion, is a Hall of Famer. Howard Johnson was a platoon third baseman. He ended up being an incredible player with the Mets. Chet Lemon, Kirk Gibson, Larry Herndon, and Darrell Evans. They had, and Willie Hernandez, who won the Cy Young and the MVP that year for the Tigers. They at one point were 30-5, 50 and like in 10. They won over 100 games. They ended up beating us in 3 games in the postseason. Then they went and beat up on San Diego for the World Series, and Sparky Anderson was their manager. And I remember, playing in that we went to Japan in '88 in an all-star tournament there. And Sparky was the manager. I said, did you guys have 40 guys on your roster or 25 like the rest of it? Because they had platoon players before there was platoon players. And they had so many great players, and they played exceptional baseball that I thought that was one of the best teams I've ever seen. And that ballpark from that point, that was my first year all the way through to the end. Even when it's a broadcaster going in there, I'm like, I'm going to get a foul ball, probably hit me right in the head. Something like that. There was something about that ballpark. I couldn't win it no matter what I did. But then again, like I said, I go to Kansas City and I'm like, what have I done wrong? But again, it goes back to the fact that there's something about that stadium that made me uncomfortable pitching. And when you do that, bad things happen.
Gubie, you mentioned earlier talking about edge. Both of you guys talk about having an edge against your opponents, and you've told me some fun stories about you had some emotion on the mound. People thought you were a little out there, which was to your advantage. But tell me about a story about getting a hitter and just yelling at him up the line to first base. You had some good stories about just giving it to people.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's thing. Everyone said, let the kids play. You hear that slogan now for baseball, that guys, fist pump or flip the bat and stuff. And I was one of those guys that if I got you out, and I'll be honest with you, is I never ever watched video of my games ever, because I would always think I'd be really upset. And I know my dad would always say, son, would you please, if you're going to say a bad word, say it into your glove where I can't read your lips like everyone else is doing right now. So, I mean, there was a time when I remember Steve Lyons, who ended up being a real good friend of mine. He tries to get a bunt down the line. So I fielded it, and I tried to be a gentleman. I really did try to be a gentleman. I just kind of tried to tag him like that. And he tried to, give me a little shiver. And I'm like, all right, that's it. We're on. So I guess if you ever do that again, as you go down the line, I will plant you in the base. You'll be out and you will be knocked out. And I'm like, and then I remember one time, even seeing Canseco last year, I threw a ball inside at him and he starts screaming. And I'm saying, I'm screaming right back. I'm bring it on out here. I'm thinking, and then I look back and go, he was faster than me, stronger than me. Where am I going? I got no chance, but they all thought I was crazy. And one time, I'll never forget this one. Mel Hall, who was a strong guy, it's a 0-0 game in Kansas City, hits a 2-run home run in the 8th inning. And as soon as I threw the ball, I knew when I gave up a home run, it was gone. So I'm looking down, I've got my head down, I'm waiting to ask for a new baseball. And I look up and he's still at home plate. So I'm like, all right. So then all of a sudden my heart's going boom, 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 boom. I see it. He's finally making it the first second. And I started, if he's going third to home, I'm started walking towards home. And Mike McFarland, he goes, please don't, please don't, please don't, please don't, please don't. I go, what? I said, I know what I was going to tackle him before he got to home plate. And Max screamed, he goes, you will never pitch again if you do that. Use your mind, do something, get out of that mode you're in right now. So finally I stopped, turned around. Hey, he did his job. And that was a big moment home run. So I understand why he did it, but I was such a lunatic that I was literally going to tackle him before he scored the run. I'm thinking, what am I doing? What am I thinking of there? So there was many, many, many times like that where, even I did see a couple highlights of the playoff game against Toronto up in the old exhibition stadium, by the way. That was freezing pitching out there. That was before they had the dome. And I'm like waving back guys after I strike them out. I'm thinking, why'd I do that? I don't know why I did that. But it was just reaction because I was like, it was such it was like, it felt like it was me against the hitter. I didn't even care about anybody else who was on the team at that point. It was just a battle. And sometimes I was a little bit too emotional, I think, so that's why, like, whenever, like, the Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year when they played the Chiefs, everyone's going, you want to go to a Super Bowl party? No. And my family knows me by now. They all leave and I'm there by myself. So I can throw stuff. I can be like Silver Linings Playbook. I have all my stuff lined up where if I move anything, the Eagles are going to lose. It's going to be an interception and all this stuff. So I was always, as a Philly, you always expect the worst. So I'm always thinking that. So whenever things go well, you're slightly emotional. Probably too much. That's why, like I said, every opponent I ever faced absolutely hated my guts. They hated my guts. And all of a sudden they're on my team. They go, hey, you're not a bad guy. I go, yeah. I said, I apologize for what I did, but I didn't mean anything by it. But when you were on the other team, you were wearing a different uniform. I might have told you this story, friends. I'm playing my brother in basketball. He's on another team in basketball. I'm like 10 and he's 12. Loose ball. Boom. We dive for it. Bam. We get up. We're going at it on the basketball court. And because he was on the other team. So then my dad's in the stands. So he's really mad at this one now. Because then he feels this reflection on him. We get home. He brings out a pair of boxing gloves to go, all right, boys, finish it off. I'm like, looking at my dad, I said, Dad, this ain't going to work good for me. Because my brother was pretty tough. I'm like, so here we are. We walk down out of the, get down the steps out of the row home. We're out on the street. And before we started to go, he goes, okay, that's all I wanted to see. And then we went back upstairs and he took the gloves off. I'm like, oh, man, thank you, Dad, for that one. Otherwise, I was going to be dropped there right on the middle of the street in front of everybody. Needless to say, I
Wow.
didn't. It was my mom, my
Wow.
brother, anybody. It's game on when we were playing. It didn't matter. It really didn't. Is it the right way? I don't know. You know the same thing, Guy. I mean, is it that that's your edge you needed to be successful? And I think that I can't say that it was the wrong thing to do to be like, but there was never a time where even after my playing career I ever regretted anything, because every time I went out on the field, every one of my teammates would always say, you know what, I've never seen anybody give everything they had like you did. And that's why even at the end of my career, trying to come back when I was with the Angels, you referenced that, by the way. Thank you for reminding me of those 2 games with the Angels. Then my arm was completely gone. And I remember warming up for the one game at home, my first game with the Angels, the first pitch, warming up, the ball fell right out of my hand. And D. Sarcino was at short. He goes, "Hey, man, you all right?" I go, "I'm good." I didn't want to let him know that I couldn't even feel my arm or my hand at that point. So I just, I got through a few innings. I'm like, how did I do that? But they were still remembering I threw the ball hard. Here I am throwing 70 miles. Joe Morgan, I kid you not, because I saw the tape. He goes, "I didn't know Mark Gubicza had a good changeup like that." I'm like, "Hey, that wasn't my changeup. That was my fastball. I had nothing left." But I kept telling the Angels people, say, "I'm fine." I said, I had surgery on my shoulder, and everybody else is usually out for like 12 months or 15 months. So I told him, I said, "I'll be ready to go in a month." So here I am. I'm throwing flat ground and throwing off the mound a month and a half later after having surgery, pretty radical surgery on my shoulder, because I owed it to my teammates. And should I have waited 12 months? Maybe would I have been a better Angel? I didn't care, because I wanted to do that for my teammates. And that team that year, I felt had a chance of being special there. And, Chuck Finley got hurt. Langer got hurt a little bit that year, but we had some guys on that team. It was coming together. You had the Salmons, you had the Ersteds, you had the Jimmy Evans. All those guys in GA were all young players coming up, and you just knew they were going to be good. And eventually we saw how good they were in 2002 when they won the World Series.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I'll tell you what I love, because this takes me back to about, playing with injuries, not wanting to disappoint your teammates. Even if you felt like you were, 50, 60%, you felt like you could still contribute. And I'm not going to say that the guys in today's sports world are different. A lot of people ask me like, "Hey, are they soft? Are they whatever?" And I said, you know what? I said, it's different. And I go, they're just smarter than we were. I mean, I think we all feel we were like in that position of fearing for our jobs, right? If you weren't in the net or on the mound and contributing, then if you're injured, someone else was coming in and getting an opportunity. And I think that I never wanted anybody else to take that net, to all of a sudden get on a hot streak, and then they go, "Oh, hey, we have an option here." So, but I think today's athletes, I think across the board, like they know that if they're 70%, it's going to affect not just their stats, but their performance on the ice and their contribution to the team. And I think that teams are fine with it now. I think they're like, "Hey, we would rather have you wait this amount of time to, recover from your injury, whether it's surgery or non-surgical, and then come back when you're ready to go." And I think that it's a healthier way for the athletes, certainly, to take care of themselves. It increases the longevity of their career. And it just, thinking about you and trying to come back and throw a ball after having surgery after a short amount of time, it's like, okay, if you rewind the clock and you go back in time and talk to yourself and say, "Hey, take the proper time, because it's going to be best for you and your career, and it'll eventually be better for your team." But in those moments, in our generation, we just wanted to get back in. And, today's athletes get a lot more support in that department from the organization.
I agree 100%. That's why I think right now what you're seeing in all sports, I mean, there's a lot of the same type of players, but I feel that the athlete itself is so much better. They're better in tune with their body, with their mind, and the skill sets right now. As much as we all like to say as old timers, "Oh, well, back in our day, everything was better." I think skill set and the preparation is better. It is. And now if we were able, you fast forward, if we've been able to be in that generation, who knows? We could have been way better players than we end up being. But again, I still have no regret for what decisions I made. I'm sure the same thing for you, Guy. And
Yep.
you, Frenchie, you probably regret working with me a number of different times, but that's it. That's a whole nother story, Frenchie.
He's got a lot of regrets with the two of us, that's for sure.
I was just going to say, I've worked through a lot of hand cramps trying to hold that microphone, and it's been tough. Let me tell you.
But you
Just trying to
persevered.
relate to anything you guys are saying right now. Persevered. Gubie, in today's game, what pitcher out there resembles you? Because if you guys mentioned the athletes are totally different, and you see guys embracing from opposite teams before the game. You didn't see that back in the day. Like, who has that Bulldog mentality? We like to use that phrase. Who has that fire that most resembles the way you used to pitch?
I mean, it's easy to say Justin Verlander, and I've got to know him. I've even said that to him a number of different times. Well, the younger Walker Buehler is one of those pitchers. I mean, he was with the Dodgers, and he went over to Phillies. I just love the way he competed, and you never, he's not afraid to wave you back as a hitter to the dugout after he gets you out. And besides the fact he always had the tightest uniform, like I used to do too. So I always said that Walker Buehler was my guy because I wanted everybody in that dugout to be screaming at me and everything else. So you see that edge with him. Jacob deGrom has that edge. Even as quiet as Shohei Ohtani is, if you have a good swing against him, he had some tremendous years on the mound for the Angels. And I think you're going to see that a little bit more so with the Dodgers coming up. But he always had that edge. Jerry Weaver, I still text him. He was the one guy for a long period of time. John Lackey was like that too, but he had an edge to him. And he didn't care if you liked him or not if you were an opponent. So that even though he's not a player right now, but Weave was always that guy. But I just love anybody. And Tarek Skubal, going back to what, here we are. Zach Neto hits a home run off the first pitch of the game. Boom. He jumped on it. Great swing by Neto. Next time around with a man on third, Skubal strikes him out and he screams at him like, obviously we can't say some of the words that he said to him going back to the dugout. Here they are ready to go at it. I'm like, at that point, this guy Skubal. I don't like what he did to Zach because I love that kid, but he wasn't going to just sit back and say, hey, relax. And then Hunter Brown's another guy for the Houston Astros. I did a podcast with Todd Callis the other day. He goes, who's the guy that kind of you love? And Hunter Brown, because he has that mentality that I'm going to get you out, and I don't care if I make you look horrible or not. I'm going to get you out, and you better not ever be comfortable in the batter's box. So there is a lot of guys like that now, even though everything's driven by information and data. There's still that heart, that edge that there's some guys out there to really go out there and compete at the highest level.
Do you know what's intimidating about both of you guys that you have in common? Your flow back in the day.
Oh, back in the day,
you both
had, I was going to say mine does not exist
now.
any longer.
You both had the incredibly intimidating mullets and the flow coming out of Gibo's helmet and the mask and the flow coming out of your baseball cap, Gubie. I mean, those were impressive days. Looking back at some of those photos from both of you, just wonderful salads. Just wonderful.
Yeah, I appreciate that more than I'm sure Gubie does, but it was, it was what we did, right? It was part of being, the athlete of that generation, and I kind of miss it. Some guys break it out here and there, you can see, but yeah, it's the reason I'm wearing a hat. Right now.
Yeah. It's funny,
I'm trying to fix my lighting and there's just way too much shine. I don't have a stage manager to help me out right here.
So, Guy, no, we didn't call it mullet back there. We just called it our flow we had back there. And it became, you had the description of it as years gone by, but you just did it. And I used to mess even with hitters. I always pretend like I go back and like I had some kind of gel in my hair to be able to have something on the baseball to make it move. So they would check the baseball. I'm like, God, I got to break my mind right there. That's all I wanted to do. But it was just one of those things where hey, it's all about looking cool too. You're getting people out or making a save, but you also want to look cool out there, man. It's all about, Frenchie.
I love it. Oh,
if anybody should understand about looking cool, Ken French.
Well, I have to sit next to you two guys.
You still have the salad.
Yeah. So I gotta up my cool game every time I sit next to both of you guys. Gubie, speaking of that, did you ever think that you would be behind the microphone in the broadcast booth? Do you think that would be the second part of your career?
No, never. I mean, growing up in Philly playing stickball, listening to Harry Kalas and Richie Ashburn and pretending and talking to, like Harry would talk. It's out of here, when Mike Schmidt would swing the bat, hit it out. But to be honest, guys, I have no idea how this even unfolded where I'm at. Because here I am, I'm retired, and I'm coaching some high school baseball. And out of nowhere, I'm in Vegas for the Super Bowl. We used to always go up there for the Super Bowl weekend. And I got a call from somebody from ESPN that said, "Hey, would you be interested in auditioning for our Baseball Tonight show?" I'm like, "Sure." I'm like, "By the way, how did they get my phone number?" And they go, "What, can you be here tomorrow?" I go, "Well, I'm at Vegas for this, watch the Super Bowl." I go, "We need you here tomorrow." I'm like, "Well, I'll get there on Monday." I go, "No, we can't use you." I'm like, "Okay, I don't care." So maybe I said, "Okay, it wasn't meant to be." Then all of a sudden, a month later, I get a call from a guy named Hank Siegel, who was with Fox Sports at that point. He goes, "Can you come in and do an audition? We're going to start this new show called Baseball Today," kind of a takeoff of Baseball Tonight, 4 live regional shows out of the Fox lot there in Pico. And I'm like, "Sure." I'm like, so I'm driving to, Century City, which is not far from my house. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what I'm doing with TV. I've never done it before. I'm thinking, how did they get my phone number? How did they get my phone number? So I'm going in there, and all I remember, Steve Sachs with me. Ron Darling just started at that point, and Keith Oberman was there, Chris Myers. I mean, they had a stable of incredible Jeannie Zelasco, everybody there, Chris Rose.
Yeah. Wow.
So I'm sitting there, and I see 4 cameras, and they're like, "Go." I'm like, with no preparation at all. But the only thing, for whatever reason, I saw the one camera with the little red light, so I turned my head to it, and I'm started talking to the camera. And it was like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So I go, "Okay, thanks. We'll give you a call." I said, "Oh, we'll give you a call back." The old Hollywood thing. So literally I get home, boom, my phone rings. "Hey, can you be there tomorrow? We're doing starting our live show. You're hired." I'm like, "What?" And here I was then hired just like that with no idea. So, and I went in there and it was, it was a work in progress, just trying to get comfortable. The hardest thing is, guys, is talking to a camera, because you're used to talking to your friends like, we're doing right here. It's not an easy thing to do. You think it's easy, but it's not. But, Scott Ackerman, who did all those incredible football shows with Howie Long and Strahan and all those guys, he was my boss. So he would bring me in after every show and he goes, "So what do you think?" I'm like, "Man, that's one of those trick questions. What do you think?" I said, "Well," and he goes, "Tell me something the guy or woman at home doesn't know." So it took me like 2 seconds thinking, like, why did that guy hit the ball out of the ballpark? Not saying, "Wow, it's a home run." Well, anybody could say that because you could see that on TV. Explain and tell me how and why he did that. And so then all of a sudden, like even now when I'm doing the broadcast, I never say like, "Well, it's a home run." I go, "No, he had a home run because he was looking for a pitch, or a pitch was down. He's a good low ball hitter," whatever, the scenario comes about. And also, tell me something that's going to happen before it happens. That's why I've been a big believer in that first guessing, because I read body language. I know when a pitcher's not comfortable. I know when a hitter's not comfortable. You can tell by the way they're gripping the bat, how loose their hands are, if they moved up in the batter's box. Same thing with the pitcher. If he's moving around more than normal, I'm going to say, "Well, here comes he's throwing a fastball here. He's going to try to sneak it in. That hitter better be ready." Boom. Then you have your first guess. So those little things and the critiques that I learned right away helped form me into, and this is going to be my 20th year doing this now. So fast forward to Frenchie, I'm still shocked I'm doing it. I love being around the team. It's my best way of being still part of that fraternity of players. And, I don't have to worry about giving up a home run anymore. I could talk about a home run instead of giving up a home run. So I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. And it's so funny to talk to, other athletes who have gotten into the broadcast world, and much like yourself or myself, Garrett Anderson, who we talked to the other day, a lot of it is, one part is really personality, and you've got a great big personality, and you like to talk, and no surprise that you're fantastic at what you do, and you provide the insight that fans want to know. And I think that's where we come in handy, right? I think that's where, Frenchie's been, awesome, plainly teeing me up in our pregame, intermission, and postgame shows over the years. And as we got more comfortable together, he would be able to kind of guide me down a path of like, "Okay, hey, this is where I'm going to lead you, and then I just need your expertise." And I think it's important to be able to tell fans, what you saw or why you saw and why, somebody hit a home run or somebody scored a goal or the goalie made a save. And I think that's part of the entertainment value of the analyst. And I know as just a fan, when I sit back and watch your broadcast, I listen for certain things, and I actually try to bring it into when I'm working, being those things like, okay, don't say that he just scored a goal. Like, why did he score the goal, or what did the shooter see, or was the lane open for passing? So I think those are really critical, and you have to have a great partner that you work with. I think that goes without really being said, that if you're comfortable with the host, which has been Frenchie for a lot of my career, and the people you work with, it's so important for them to be able to give you the time to talk about what you need to, and you got to get in and get out, right? I think that's the thing that some people don't understand, is there's the timing part of it, where it's like, well, I can't talk forever because the play is going to continue, especially in hockey. But for what you do, I think it's great. It's great insight, and I know that we've both been very lucky to work with Ken French in the past.
Yeah, you're exactly right with Frenchie. I mean, we've had some incredibly fun moments. I was looking through my photos the other day. We have a picture of each other holding a guitar. It was Prince night out there in Minnesota one day. We're pretending like we're playing air guitar with Prince night. It was so cool. We had a blast. We've had some tough times where we had to go on air where it isn't easy. And Frenchie has always been so good. We had such a good relationship, Frenchie and I, that he kind of knows what I might say, and I kind of know what he's going to say, know how to go navigate through difficult times, navigate through some fun times where you got to kind of tone it down, where it's like, all right, fans are watching for the players, not necessarily for us. So it's sometimes you get caught up in having the fun, and fans understand that. And that's why I think they embrace us the way we all three of us go out there and have fun during the broadcast.
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I echo working with both you guys, it's fun. At the end of the day, it's just incredibly fun. And Gubie, you and I, like, trying not to laugh, it's like the best thing ever on set. I don't think people realize that we are cracking up before they say and go. And we are like busting up, going, we're not going to get through this. And Gibo and I are doing skits and having fun and playing around. I mean, it's just, you got to make it fun, and it is sport at the end of the day. But it's sitting next to you guys. You're the best. So I appreciate that, but it's been equally is an honor for me to hang out with you two. But Gubie, before we let you go, I do want to ask a few more with the broadcast booth. When it comes to, you mentioned almost 20 years. I mean, that's incredible. What a run. And you're going to be there for a long time to come as well. And when you look at the moments you've been able to be part of, like, what is like a moment that stands out to you, a call, something that you witnessed on the field that just stands out to you as something that you were so happy to be part of?
Oh boy, Frenchie, that's a tough one. I've seen, being around with Mike Trout all his career here, and hitting for the cycle. And last year when he hit his 400th career home run, knowing how much of a struggle it was for him to be back out in the field, stay healthy enough, and to embrace him, take a picture with him with the actual baseball. Those moments, I even get goosebumps even talking about that. Seeing Albert Pujols get his 3,000 hit, and his 2,000th RBI, 500th and 600th career home runs. Seeing Shohei pitching a doubleheader, going to 9-inning, 1-hit shutout, and any normal pitcher is completely shot. So here in game 2, we have a doubleheader that he goes out and hits 2 home runs in that game. The next game, I'm thinking, this guy is not human. That's when everyone's going with the unicorn thing. So those moments like that, but it's still one of the most unbelievable moments I think I've ever seen in my life. And I'll winning a World Series, all those things, but being on the broadcast that game where Taylor Cole and Felix Pena combined to throw a no-hitter on the night where we honored Tyler Skaggs, it's still impossible that happened that night. Impossible, because both those pitchers love them. But there's some traffic when they're on the mound. To throw a no-hitter that day on that night, I don't think a lot of people. We did a seminar with Fox. Big Fox came in, and we had to go down and talk about that night and how that was unfolding. I'll never forget pressing on the talkback. You guys, we all know that we're technical people. With the talkback back to our truck, saying, "I said, oh my God, this is in the 6th inning." I said, oh my God, this is going to happen. If it does, I don't care if I ever do it in another game the rest of my life. So then all of a sudden it's the 8th inning. I can hear Well, you don't hear anything in the truck. They're going, you're right. You're right. I'm like, and then all of a sudden, letting it breathe the ninth inning. And in those moments like that I've learned as an analyst, not as a play-by-play, but as an analyst, big moments, play-by-play, that's their call. Let it breathe. Let the fans react. So that's the hardest thing sometimes because you're a fan, you're like, home run, you're screaming right away. But I inevitably, and I learned that right away from my bosses over there at Fox when I first started, your job is let it breathe and then explain how it happened after everyone reacts. And Vin Scully was the all-time best at that. Like somebody, Kirk Gibson hit a home run. I can't believe what I just saw. And then boom, let it breathe. But that whole night, letting things breathe into the ninth inning and then that last out and seeing the guys come up on the mound and taking their jerseys on the mound, it's something I'll always remember the rest of my life. I mean, because it should have, the possibility of that happening was zero, in my opinion. Yet everything that unfolded that whole night was something that I wouldn't be surprised if they even made a movie about it because it was impossible that it happened. Impossible.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of really what you believe, it certainly seemed like there was a higher power involved in that evening, for sure. And you alluded to some difficult moments and we talked about being able to sit next to you two guys and Guibo, you and I were together when Jay Bomeister collapsed behind the bench with the Ducks and trying to navigate that. Thank God I was navigating with you. And then Gubie, you and I, speaking of Skaggs, the day that we were told of him passing, and then you and I had to go to the broadcast booth and do a broadcast that night. And I will never forget having to go. I'm sitting in the broadcast booth. I'm staring at an obituary picture of Skaggs sitting there, and you were with the team, asked to come in, and I'll never forget. They were counting down in my ear, and we were waiting for you to arrive. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know how I'm going to say it. And literally, we're going on air. I'm just going to be by myself because you were trying to get there. You come running in with tears in your eyes, and we basically hugged. You sat next to me, and I don't remember what I said. I don't remember what we said. I don't remember how we got through it. But again, those are the other sides of this sport, the human side of it that people don't see enough of, I think. And again, just I give both of you guys kudos to helping me through it, and hopefully it translated well. But you want to do those people justice that are suffering, and those are moments that, I mean, certainly I was fortunate enough to be with you on the no-hitter night as well, and being a part of those moments. I mean, that's a part of this business that's part of it, right? We like to laugh and we like to do all these things, but then there is that other side of it that we are faced with at times, and navigating it is certainly, to be difficult at times. But you guys, again, I think both of you are being able to sit next to you during those moments.
Yeah, Frenchie Guy, I'll tell you, that night was this something, I remember being on the bus, getting pulled off the bus and finding out the news and sitting there with the team, all his teammates, and we're all part of this whole friendship too. And once you're doing the broadcast, you're part of that team. And just getting through that and sitting there and going, this is not real. He's a friend. I always would say to him, because I would literally talk to him every day before he pitched, send him, because we go, get a coffee in the morning before we start. We talk about what I thought he needed to do that day. We built that friendship. And all of a sudden I'm like, we're all like, we're numb. We don't know what to do. And you were already there at the stadium, and Nick Davis was our boss. And he goes, hey Mark, we need you to go to do the show with Ken French. I said, Nick, I can't do this. I can't. He goes, the thing you remember right now is you're no longer a player. You're a part of the media. And as difficult as that is, that means you basically have a job to do to be able to explain what it's the feeling for the the players and everything, and knowing Tyler's family. I'm like, I said, Nick, I can't do this. I can't. He goes, you are doing it. And I'm like, and I realized that I had to separate myself. I'm no longer, even though the same thing. We think we're still players, but when you're on this side of it, there is a separation. So here we are. The pregame show's coming on in 30 minutes, and we're in South Lake, and that's a long drive. So I'm thinking, I'm never going to make it. So this one somehow, again, by the grace of God, I had a driver that drove a lot of the Cowboys from out in that area because I lived out there. He knew the back ways to get back and around. And I got there just before going on. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to make it. But then being with you, Frenchie, and we were able to talk about the good times with Tyler. And otherwise, I would, I still don't know how we made it. You did a tremendous job on that one, Frenchie. I'll tell you, it was literally the most incredibly difficult thing ever because you knew we wanted to present and talk about how great, of a person and a friend he was. But it was also like, we don't want to make it, without us because it was so hard to get through that. But you helped me get through that in a way that I'll never forget. And I'd appreciate you doing that for me, French, because I didn't think I was going to do it. And you saw me when I literally was flying up there. He just got in there as 3, 2, 1, boom. We're like, as soon as we go on live, I just got there and you did a tremendous job because that's difficult, man. I'll tell you what, it was so hard to do, but I'm glad we were able to do that. And the next day after they canceled that game, the next day, Cole Calhoun hits a home run, points up to the heavens for his teammate and all those things. It was like, looking back on all that time, even, being involved with Nick Adenhart doing the game with Roy Marcus. And I'll never forget saying, Nick Adenhart has arrived. And then next to me, like 4 hours later, he's gone. I'm like, how is this? Those moments, but you also you're human as a broadcaster too. And I think that's a big thing. We're human, but we also, people, want to hear from us, be a part with us. So it is important to be able to try to make them feel as comfortable as possible, if that makes any sense.
No, for sure. Yeah. Gibo, I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's a difficult situation for everybody to be put in. I just think that, because of your relationship, both of you with the team, or even the situation with St. Louis Blues when they were in town, you kind of are glad that you're the one sitting in front of the camera, as difficult as it is. And I think it's, because of the relationship with players and management, that you have that insight and that, there's comfort with fans knowing that, like, hey, there's Gubie and Kent talking about this. I wouldn't want to hear from anybody else in this moment. So I think that's something that you always try to take yourself out of the position, put yourself in a fan position and say, I have the sense of comfort because of these guys that I see every day on TV, and they're like my family.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I didn't want to be there, but I was glad it was me. And I was glad it was Gubie, and I was glad it was you, Gibo. It's like, we were meant to be there. And again, those are just moments that are part of the business, unfortunately. But, I want to, as we, again, Gubie, one of those guys we can talk to forever about anything. I mean, no matter how high or how low, but I mean, you're going in, you said 20 years. I mean, what are you looking forward to here? I don't want you to break down the team, but just the game, just the environment, just the business. I mean, what are you looking forward to over the next year or so, in watching, how sports is being translated to everybody. It's so the landscape is changing as we speak, and it's affecting all of us right now.
Yeah. I mean, for me going in, it's going to start, I'm going to be going to spring training invited, Kurt Suzuki invited me again this year. I'm going to be a coach in uniform, which, you start building those relationships, because now all of a sudden, awesome. I always made that speech like, here it is, the talking head, but there is somebody different besides the guy they hear on TV and stuff like that. So you're building those relationships, and I have done that over the last few seasons, and I can't wait to see like Zach Neto. I talked to him a couple times during the off season, and I always, everyone talks about 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases, but I call him 20 guy because he hits 20 doubles in there too. Great defender. Seeing him progress and become a better player. Nolan Shawnowell doing that. What Joe Adele did last year, the guy with all that pressure coming up, filling it last year with all the home runs he hit, becoming the player, just a smile on his face. I think a guy like Logan O'Hoppe, went from, the great first half to struggle, and, everyone's like down on him at this point, but knowing the kind of competitor he is. But, and I'll never forget it, going back to even Mike Trout, where he talked about he hit his 400th home run last year. Then he got on a streak there in the end where he had like 4 or 5 home runs. And we have a good relationship. We're obviously always talking Eagle stuff and things like that, Philly stuff. But he said, I found it. And I didn't even ask him a question after that, because once, Guy, this same thing, when a star is locked in or something, I found it. I didn't even need him to ask him a question. I know exactly what he meant, where, He found where he needs to be with his swing to be the superstar that he once was and still is when he's healthy. So I expect something magical, but I do love this staff we got going here right now too. And I have built relationships with every staff that's ever been over the years, but Kurt Suzuki, I've known him for a while, but Mike Maddox coming in and working with these pitching staff, Reed Detmers, who threw a no-hitter one of those times too, and being a part of that one too, coming back to rotation. And some of the guys they added, like Grayson Rodriguez, Jim Palmer, right after we made that trade with Taylor Ward, who we know him very, very well, good friend, and wishing him well in Baltimore. Jim Palmer says, you're going to love this kid. If he's healthy, he's a number one ace type pitcher. So with Soriano in there and Kikuchi, I know all the publications are saying where the Angels are going to end up. Even though when they say you're not going to win, there's something that gives you that energy to go, yeah, we are going to win. And hopefully that's going to be the case this year.
We all hope that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I see that with the Ducks this year. I mean, remember how when are these young kids ever going to flourish to be what we thought? I mean, I remember seeing some games and being over there and thinking, okay, these young kids, when do they flourish? Okay, you know what? They're there right now. They're playing extremely good hockey, and watching the Ducks right now, I'm thinking, you never know. When you have a goalie like Guy in the postseason, a hot goalie, you never know. But getting in the postseason, you want the fan base to feel
hot
that
goalie,
feeling.
hot pitcher. Yeah.
I was going to let you go, but I'm not, because I got one more question for you. I do have to ask you before you leave. Speaking of hockey, speaking of the Ducks, you had the chance to get between the benches for a broadcast a couple of years ago. And growing up in Philly, we talked about the great teams, the Broad Street Bullies, and everything that the sports and the fan that you are. What was that experience like to be down on ice level and get to see that sport from a different perspective?
You know what, Frenchie and Guy, that was literally one of the coolest sports experiences I've ever had in my life. And I remember going into the truck and John Hefner was our boss at that point. They wanted me to wear a goalie mask basically in there, just to protect myself. Because I'm thinking, all right, as much as I think it's probably like the right decision to do, I don't know if I lost all my cool if I go in there like that. So I just had my glove on in there, and I'm thinking that on that ice, I couldn't believe how fast, how big, and how in like the sounds of the puck on the stick and the banging of the boards and how incredibly fast the game. And I'll tell you what, in broadcasting the hockey game, oh my word, I don't know how you do it because everything's going like so fast and everyone's last name is like my last name. So it's not easy to be able to pronounce names too. So I'm watching and I'm right next to Winnipeg.
No, the global influence.
Oh my word. At Winnipeg, they were a gigantic team. I mean, I remember everyone said they got one of the biggest teams in hockey. They're all right, literally like 4 feet from me. And I got a glove and this one guy's looking over at me. I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to protect myself. He's trying because I have my blue glove and I still have my name on. He's trying to read it. He goes like, who the heck is this guy in between the thing? And see Zegras was on the team and a bunch of the Ducks there. And I'm thinking, this is so cool just to see the interaction of these guys. They're jarring at each other, from both benches. But the actual speed of the game is nothing that I've ever experienced in my life. I imagine it would be like going to a NASCAR or Indianapolis, 500. The speed of these guys going around, the size and how incredibly athletic. I'm saying that puck and how they handle it's like they're fielding a ground ball, but they're doing it with a stick and smashing into the boards. And a couple times because there's no glass, in front of me, that stick comes, right by my head. I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to wear one of these things. I'll be in YouTube moments forever if I wear one, a hockey puck or something. But it was like the coolest thing. And by the way, it was freezing down there too. I forgot how cold it is down there. The ice I used to do playing ice hockey as a kid. I never thought about being cold, but when you get older, that was cold down there. But I'd never experienced anything like that before in my life. And it was like one of those moments where, like I said, lucky enough to be down there. And it was awesome. I tell you, I'll never forget that. And I'll never, and I've always said this, and I'm not just saying it because you're here, Guy. I think hockey players are literally the best athletes because what you got to do, I told you before, like when I was skating, how I stopped, I smashed into boards and then I was like redirected going the other way. To stop on a dime, to catch, be able to pass the puck like that, to be able to, have somebody whacking at your hands and your legs with a stick and you're still controlling the puck and be honest with you, 2 minutes on the ice, you think, okay, it's only 2 minutes. You are completely worn out. Because I remember going to some hockey games, even when I used to go to Kings games too. Those guys are literally on bikes after the game. I'm like, wait a minute, we're grabbing a cold one after a game. They're on the stationary bike just to build to keep those legs strong. So I have all the respect in the world for those guys, and that's why so even watching the hockey here in the Olympics for our women and men, I'm pulling for them because tell you what, I even watched the documentary on the Miracle on Ice there in '80. I mean, it was still. I love that movie Miracle,
yeah.
but seeing the documentary is like I'm like, I think you had to be that kind of guy to get the most out of it because I still, even though we're not breaking down hockey necessarily, but to beat that Russian team is still, that should have, like, again, it should have never happened. But because of that, something you have that edge. And he said, I'll never forget, they could beat us 9 out of 10 or 10 out of times, but not tonight. We're the best hockey team in the world tonight. And that's the mentality you have to have is no matter what you're doing in life, but to see them do that, and hopefully it'll happen again here in the Olympics for our USA team.
Yeah, me too. It goes down to me as the greatest victory. I'll be biased in any sport at any time. I mean, I know there's been a million amazing victories throughout sports in the history of all games, but to me, that goes down as the David versus Goliath. And, it certainly had a huge impact on me as a kid growing up in upstate New York, knowing Lake Placid was a couple hours away, and to be able to watch it on TV and witness it, it had a huge impact on my love of the sport and the goals that I eventually set for myself. And one being, I would love to be able to wear a Team USA jersey in the Olympics someday. And, proud to be able to say I was able to do that later on as a professional. But yeah, just an incredible moment. And I'm glad that you got between the benches because every time people say, like, I've never been to a game, where should I sit? And I said, listen, I don't want to spend your money, but sit as close down to the ice as possible because you will appreciate the tactile of the game, right? You'll smell, you'll hear, you'll witness things that you won't witness as you sit further up into the stands because the game slows down. So I think that's such a great vantage point. I'm glad you made it through without getting, high sticked or hit by the puck. Otherwise, it would have been a great initiation for your broadcast career, getting a cut and getting, we call it a zipper when you get stitched up because it would literally look like a zipper on your face.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Gubie, as we mentioned, we could keep this conversation going, but we talk about, again, this has been a great get for us. We're so happy you were able to jump on with us and spend some time, share some stories. We both consider you a good friend, and we're so happy to work in this industry together. And thanks again for coming on the program. We can't thank you enough. And we're going to ask you again, man. There's a lot more to talk about. So hopefully you'll be able to jump on with us down the road.
Frenchie Game, it's been awesome talking to you, and you guys are the best. I mean, I consider you guys friends and family, so hopefully we'll run each other in person or back out here on our podcast down the road.
Yeah. Hey, I got an idea for not the mask and the mic, but Gubie could get a podcast called The Mound and the Mic. I don't know, just throwing it out there. Mound and the mic.
Yeah.
Look at that.
There you go. There you go.
Dual podcast. Yeah. We should do it. I love it. Well, don't forget, you can catch this podcast, The Mask of the Mic, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course, The Mask of the Mic YouTube channel. We'll be broadcasting that as well. Gubie, thanks again for joining us, man. Have a great season. Maybe there'll be a chance to be able to sit next to you here in the near future. That'd be great. And we will certainly we'll see you again soon.
We'll see you guys out at the Big A soon. Peace.